4 more signs you're a bad car owner. If you haven't seen the first part, don't worry about it. You can check it out after this one. The first sign that you're a bad car owner is if you say things like electric cars don't need maintenance. While it's true that electric vehicles generally tend to have less maintenance than an internal combustion engine, that does not mean they're maintenance free. And truth be told, nothing in the world is maintenance free. Everything will eventually break, including your body. Again, this goes back to the appliance ideology that modern American car owners seem to have. For the same reason people are somehow finding ways to blow up super reliable Honda Civics, the same is starting to happen with electric cars, especially when they fall in the hands of naive, lazy owners. Sure, they might be able to get away with ignoring everything maintenance related for a few years, but heaven forbid they sell the vehicle and have the second owner inherit all of the stupid problems that they had forgotten to deal with. Truth be told, cars are cars and machines are machines. Seriously, electric isn't invincible. The concept of electric cars has actually been around much earlier than people realize, and the concept of electric technology has also been around for a long time. It's not invincible. We know it's not invincible. But again, common consumer ideology of wanting to be as lazy and appliance-like as possible with cars has caused a lot of people to unfortunately abuse their electric cars, sometimes even due to stupid misunderstandings. I made a video once talking about regenerative braking and how I actually unironically met people in real life who thought Tesla's regenerative braking meant that their brakes regenerated, like regrew themselves like plants growing in the sunlight. And I was like, no, you still need to, like a Tesla still has disc brakes, it still has brake calipers, it still uses brake pads. Again, just because the motor is no longer an internal combustion engine, that doesn't mean the rest of the literal car is no longer not a car. It still has tires that need replacing. You still gotta check your tire pressure, you still gotta do brake maintenance, you still gotta check some fluids. Because yes, just like gaming computers, electric cars still usually feature some kind of coolant. Electric cars aren't some groundbreaking, super jaw-dropping, worship jizz-worthy, godlike technology from the heavens. They're still just cars. And I don't mean that in an offensive way. I mean that in the sense that you do need to take care of them, and please take care of them, because the whole point of electric is to create a greener world. So you should work on repairing your current vehicle instead of just buying a new vehicle to replace it each time something small happens. The second sign that you're a bad car owner is if you aren't properly maintaining your tires. Buying tires is expensive, and I know that telling someone to buy new tires when they have to isn't exactly something they look forward to. However, believe it or not, maintaining tires starts long before the point that you have to repurchase a new set. And there are many things you can do to actually make your current set of tires, as well as any future set of tires you purchase, last significantly longer. The first thing is make sure you're never underinflating them. Make sure they're always at the right tire pressure, and make sure you check every now and then, because they do lose air depending on weather conditions, temperature, or even just driving, and unfortunately if you hit a nail or things like that, and you can get those patched. Another thing you have to look out for is having poor alignment, because how your tread wears can also determine whether or not you have to replace tires sooner than you expect. By having the proper alignment, or making sure your camber is adjusted properly. Again, I know some Stance Nation boys gonna purposely just roll their eyes at this and stance their car out. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about people who are just normal car enthusiasts. They just want an everyday driver, and they just want to keep tires that last longer. For you guys, make sure you get your cars aligned properly. It's very important that when you buy tires that their inner and outer tread are wearing accordingly, because like I said, if you have a lot of tread left on the outside and when you go to check you're like, man, why am I being told to replace my tires? Why am I losing grip in the rain? I still feel a lot of tread here. For all you know, when you look on the inside of your tires, all that tread could be worn out when the tire's actually taken off, and that is usually just a result of having poor alignment. And it's never fun having to replace a tire that still probably had 10, 20, 30,000 miles left on it just because you neglected to pay attention to the alignment. So definitely maintain your tires. And another thing I'd like to add to this entry before we move on is that some insurance companies, as well as some legal laws, depending on what country you're in, if you get in an accident, whether it's sliding off the road during snow, rain, or whether you crash into someone, if they found out that the reason you crashed, like you lost grip in snowy conditions, was because that you had inadequate tires for the weather conditions, or you had inadequate maintenance for the tires, like they found out you were driving on bald tread treadless tires, then they'll actually refuse to pay you. Tires are the number one thing that touch the road literally for your car. It's the whole reason your car actually moves effectively. Because of that, you should never underestimate them. The third sign that you're a bad car owner is if you ride your brakes / brake for literally no reason. This is a stupid way to wear brakes faster than expected. A surprising amount of people just brake for no reason. I see it all the time in a big city like Atlanta, or heck, I still saw it in the Midwest. There would be no cop in sight. The person in front wouldn't even be speeding, so it's not like they're about like there's no deer, there's no roadkill, there's nothing they're dodging around, there's no kid, because again, back to the Midwest example especially, you can see all the way to the horizon in certain places of Indiana, or rather most places in Indiana. It's that flat. You would know if there was a cop ambush, if there was oncoming traffic, if there was a kid on the road, if there was a deer on the road, because there's really nothing obstructing your vision. Yet some people would just brake randomly, like it'll be a 55 zone and they'll just brake down to 38. And I'm just like, why? An even worse habit than random braking is just constantly riding your brakes. And you've probably seen people do this where you see their brake lights constantly on for basically no reason. They just like to feather their brake as they move through traffic. And it's one thing when you're like bumper to bumper and you're kind of feathering your brake because you have one foot off the gas, right? But I'm talking about people who use both feet. Like I have some friends who actually have their other foot constantly resting on the brake and the other foot hitting the gas, right? So what they do is, because the other foot gets tired hanging over the brake pedal, it will sometimes start to depress, which then causes them to constantly drag their brake, which is a very horrible thing to do, not just because it's confusing other drivers on the road by lighting up your brake lights, but because it's now wearing down your brakes. We're not talking about car enthusiasts here, just average everyday drivers. They will never have a use to trail brake. And besides, we're not talking about trail braking, because trail braking usually is done through the corners. It has a purpose. I'm talking about literally just people who drag their brake just for no reason in straight lines, through traffic, through the highways, on interstates for several hundred miles. Again, it's just really confusing. It's a very unsafe habit because your brake lights are constantly on. I know beginner drivers try to use both their feet. Like if you're in a manual transmission, your other foot is controlling the clutch, right? So that already solves that issue for manual car owners. But for automatic car owners, because their left foot isn't really doing anything, it may be like fidgety. So it may try to reach for the left brake, and that's probably where this habit develops. Try to get out of that habit. Try to just fully engage your brakes and hold still when need to, and just kind of don't worry about your brakes when you don't need to. I know it sounds scary for beginner drivers, like, oh, but I want one foot constantly hovering over the brake in case you need to emergency brake. Trust me, when you have one foot doing it, you will react just in time. In fact, usually you will react better because you will not accidentally step on the gas, because your foot will leave the gas pedal to hit the brake pedal because you're only using one foot, right? Whereas if both your feet are hovering over both pedals, there have been situations where unfortunately people who do that can panic and accidentally make their foot that's over the gas jab over. And it's kind of weird because you would think you'd remember left foot from right foot, but again, in emergency situations, stupid stuff can happen and maybe your left foot panics anyways. So if one foot is doing it, the act of lifting it off and lifting the other will usually prevent an accidental engagement of the gas. The final last bad driving habit is driving on empty. It's best to drive on quarter tank or more, but if you really want to run close to dry, try to keep it 1/8 or 1/10 of a tank, so 10 to 15% of your fuel remaining. Most cars around this time will usually give a fuel warning light, which usually means that it's on its second to last sliver, so whenever you see the needle pointing to all the slivers across the dial, and these tend to usually be a red color to really let you know that your car shouldn't be on these slivers to begin with. Now, what they usually indicate is if your car starts to go below these slivers, like E for example, even if your car may still be moving, and a lot of people who started driving early on, who were just broke teenagers, which is really common in the United States, they probably already learned this, that even though if the needle dips to empty or even below empty, the car itself can still move. Now, that's not necessarily a good reason to keep doing this habit, because what is happening is the car's fuel pump is likely super stressed during this time, as it's attempting to drink every single last drop. Sometimes certain ignition cycles may not even be getting certain drops because of the inconsistency of obviously the car moving back and forth, or even leaning and rolling through corners, or leaning forward and backwards when coming to stops at stoplights. Engineer Explained has a cool video that talks about this and how it's just overall not only bad for your fuel pump, but can also affect your engine health, because again, during certain cycles of your engine, if it's not getting fuel when it should be getting fuel, that's metal on metal. You know, you're gonna get some knocking, you're gonna get some real bad results salts that can catastrophically and permanently disfigure your car. Another reason you should not get into this habit is, again, just because the car can still move in E, if you stop the car or turn the car off, there's a chance that it will not turn back on, meaning you'll just be awkwardly stranded where you were. So if it's the middle of the road, you're now stuck there. Do you really want to be that guy who has to put yourself in neutral and push your car? If you're in the middle of nowhere like the desert or the countryside, you're all on your own. You may not have the strength to push your car, especially if it's a flat road where you don't have an incline to help you to at least ride your brakes to the next gas station. Try to get in the habit of planning around gas stations. Always check your car's fuel when you leave your house each morning or leave your apartment or whatever. Before you go to work, when you start your vehicle up, check its fuel. And notice how I'm saying fuel because I just realized that this also applies to electric vehicles. If anything, they have more range anxiety due to the fact that electric charging stations are not as prevalent as gas stations depending on where you are in the United States, depending on your electric vehicle, because despite what Tesla fanboys would like to believe, the world does not revolve around them. A lot of e-bikes tend to have 38 to 75 miles before they need charging. A lot of e-mopeds tend to use 60 to 120 miles. E-motorcycles will tend to be around 140-ish miles. And even some electric cars, like smaller ones, may only go 200 to 300 miles. So especially in really sparsely populated areas, it is very much possible to be within, pretty close, like making it pretty close between charging stations. So the point I'm making is that you should always plan your longer trips, even for shorter commutes. Each time you enter your vehicle, just take a look at your fuel or charge level each time you start your vehicle up. So super easy, and you can keep a mental note of, hey, I should probably start my day off with just refueling or just letting it charge more. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you love automotive content, then make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to check out the first part of this series if you haven't already. Until then, though, see y'all next time. Blade Angel out.